Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. We are Group 4, and now we're about to present our project presentation, which is about Australian English. But before we start, let me introduce you to the members of our group first. Okay, there's Delia Mamonto, Trifiona Polak, Shaun Mamuaya, and myself, Naso Herianto. Now let's move on to our presentation. Australian English stands as a vibrant and distinct linguistic variant shaped by the diverse cultural landscape of Australia. Its evolution has been influenced by a rich tapestry of historical events, cultural interactions, and a unique blend of linguistic elements. From its root in British colonization to its contemporary form, Australian English showcases a dynamic linguistic identity characterized by its peculiar vocabulary, pronunciation, and colloquial expressions. Australia, of course, has many languages spoken by its multicultural people. There are European Australian, Asian Australian, and also Australian indigenous people. Australian English, however, is the main language spoken in the country. Due to the many nationalities living there, we can conclude also that there are people that speak other languages, for example, German, Italian, Chinese, and Japanese. Based on this fact, we of course can make a hypothesis that Australian English is ever-changing due to its constant interaction with other languages, but of course, not in a totally grand scale. It might happen to a group of new foreigners. Our group's choice to delve into the study of Australian English is rooted in the intrinsic curiosity about how this linguistic variant is perceived and defined within the broader community. The allure of Australian English lies in its impact on everyday communication and social dynamics. We aim to dissect the nuances that make Australian English unique and explore its influence on daily conversations and social interactions. Additionally, investigating the distinctions between Australian English and other English dialects served as a focal point to comprehend the cultural and linguistic diversity within the English language itself. These research questions guide our exploration into Australian English, seeking to unravel its intricacies, societal impacts, and distinctions from other English dialects. Our interest is not only in understanding the linguistic elements, but also in unraveling the cultural significance embedded with Australian English, contributing to a comprehensive understanding of its role in shaping communication and cultural identity in Australia.
Next, the research question and objective. The research question is, what are perceptions in 10 people about Australian English? And the objective is to analyze the differences and similarities in perceptions of Australian English among 10 individuals from diverse background. Next, the methodology. This research uses qualitative method. Qualitative method refers to research approach that emphasize understanding and interpreting the meanings, experience, and perspective of individuals of group. This methodology is commonly used in social science and humanities disciplines, which allows researchers to explore complex social phenomena in depth and gain insight into the subjective features of human behavior and interaction. In qualitative methodology, data collection techniques such as interviews, focus group discussion, observation, and document analysis are used to collect rich and detailed information. We took the data from students of Faculty of Humanities, English Department at Samratulangi University. As many as 10 students consists of 4 students of class 2021 and 6 students of class 2022. We collect data through direct interviews in November 2023.
So now we come to the part of result and discussion. Here we have the perceptions of 10 people regarding our group's research questions. we asked the participants two questions, namely, first, what comes to your mind when you're thinking about Australian English? How would you describe it? And then the second question is that, how do you think Australian English differs from other English dialects? Well, based on the theory on people's perspectives, the most popular opinions regarding the pronunciation regarding the pronunciation of R. The Australian O sounds like a mixture between an A and A with a hint of R. For example, the word no sounds more like nar, let's go sounds more like let's go, and the show sounds more like the shore. So now we have the conclusions from the participants' answers. There are two conclusions that we made. First of all is that Australian English is often described as unique, characterized by its distinct accent, colloquial expressions, and a blend of British influence. Many find it fun and charming, yet it can pose challenges in understanding due to its particular pronunciation of words. The linguistic blend, marked by its laid-back tone and specific phrases, creates a language identity that stands out globally, sometimes leading to confusion for those unfamiliar with its intricacies. Overall, Australian English remains a fascinating and identifiable dialect that adds to the rich tapestry of the English language. Second conclusion that we have is that Australian English stands out as one of the most unique dialects within the inner circle of English. Its distinct sounds, characterized by specific vowel and consonant pronunciations like the elongated O sound, contribute to its unmistakable accent. Beyond the accent, Australian English features a plethora of slang terms and expressions deeply embedded in its social norms, often requiring a deeper understanding to grasp their meaning. These dialects' differences in pronunciation, vocabulary, and idiomatic expression create a linguistic identity that sets it apart from British and American English. Despite these distinctions, however, all English dialects remain largely mutually intelligible, with occasional differences in pronunciation and slang terms. Overall, Australian English's unique characteristics and distinctiveness contribute significantly to the rich diversity of the English language. The answers from these participants regarding Australian English are mostly positive. They describe the accent as unique, cool, fancy, and fascinating. They highlighted the distinctiveness of Australian English through its accent, slang, and cultural nuances, while some note challenges in understanding due to differences in pronunciation and slang usage. Overall, the descriptions are appreciative and admiring of the uniqueness of Australian English. Now we have the theories about the use of Australian English in global context. In its easiness of grammatical construction, in its paucity of inflection, in its almost total disregard of the distinctions of gender accepting those of nature, in the simplicity and precision of its termination and auxiliary verbs, not less than in the majesty, vigor, and capaciousness of its expression. Our mother tongue, the mother tongue of the Australian seems well adapted by organization to become the language of the world. We come to the discussion, our group discussion from the result of our questionnaire or interview. Well, based from the perspectives of our questionnaire participants, we come across some words that the participants, use to describe this variety of English. Those words are unique, one of a kind, fun to speak, exaggerate, a little different, and surprisingly fancy. Yet, one also said that it's, quote, like a drunken version of the former, which is British English, end quote. Well, we think that for some years, Australian English does sound like a drunk British man due to the use of, quote, the additional nar here and there, end quote. One might come across a drunken pirate from the golden age of piracy in one's mind due to hearing an Australian speaking to a news reporter, Well, this is very true. In fact, there's a video of it in YouTube. Yet, to some, this language is a fancy language. Probably for us, Indonesian, we might choose British English to be fancier. Let's say some of us often imitate Hermione Granger way of speaking as a way to be heard fancy by hearers nearby. Of course, all of it depends to the matter of taste. Regarding the importance of Australian English, this language is essential with its domestic usage, for it is the national language used within the country. It is an, quote, important unifying element of Australian society, end quote. Internationally, this language might soon be the epicenter within the Asia-Pacific region. Of course, just like any other language, Australian English is an important tool that, among with its inseparable counterpart, which is culture, form the basis of the Australian people. Now we have the further discussion of Australian English. So this is not from the questionnaires or the interview that we had before. It's talking mainly about Australian English. Well, during the very first time of the British colonization of Australia, once the colony established at Sydney in 1788, they needed to come to terms with an alien word. Well, so this is how the story of Australian English began. In this alien world in which the flora and fauna and the landscape in which this flora and fauna existed were baffling to people who carried with them a language molded by the European heritage. To a limited extent, they took up indigenous words. In the case of the words that were borrowed from the indigenous language that was spoken at Sydney, most of the borrowings occurred soon after settlement. The borrowings from other indigenous languages were later, but this is only because settlement in the area where those languages were spoken occurred later as the frontier gradually spread out from Sydney. When indigenous words were not taken up, new coinages for flora and fauna based on English were produced, and there were many modifications of the meanings of existing English words to describe the very non-European landscape. In the early years of the colony, the most important development as far as Australian English was concerned was the forging of the accent. In the past, there has been much argument about whether the Australian accent was transported to Australia from London or whether it was created there. If it was created in Australia, there has also been much argument about whether it was established in Sydney and then spread to other colonies, or whether it developed independently in each of the colonies. As a result of the New Zealand research referred to above, we are now in a position to state quite firmly what happened in Australia. The convicts, administrators, and military personnel, and later the free settlers, spoke a variety of British accents. Although in the early years there were not great numbers from Scotland and Ireland, with some emphasis on the accents of southern England or southern British Isles. The new Australian dialect was created by a leveling of the various dialects that were spoken. In this process of leveling, elements of pronunciations that was especially associated with a particular dialect were eliminated.
Britain's move to join the common market in the early 1960s signaled the fact that a break between Australia and Britain was inevitable. There was a renewed interest in Australian English that went hand in hand, as it had in the 1890s, with cultural nationalism. The mid-1970s lexicographical work was the publication of the Australian National Dictionary in 1988, and dictionary that does not Australian English what the 20-volume Oxford English Dictionary does for international English. Complaints about the Australian accent dissipate, and in 1987, a government report was able to declare that Australian English is a dynamic but vital expression of the distinctiveness of Australian culture and an element of national identity. With the nationalization of the genre from Australian English, the two extremes, cultivated Australian and broad Australian, have been in rapid retreat. Of course, these extremes can still be heard, especially in older speakers, but they are hardly known to younger speakers. Australians now largely speak with one accent, as they had done in the 19th century.
Conclusion. To sum it up, Australian English really is a unique variety of English. It is a product of centuries of melting pot of cultures and languages from all over the world, as well as Australian indigenous languages. Its importance is undeniable, just the same as any other language, but essential truly as it is the foundation as a nation language of Australia. We could say that Australian English is one of the pillars of the English language. It adds to the richness of English, contributes with the vast collection of English language literature, as well as highly essential to the culture. Of course, Australian English as a language also affects literature. Of course, as members of the English department, we cherish the fact that now there are many novels, poems, as well as other literary contributions that came from Australia. Not to mention its contribution to our modern pop culture and perhaps one of its most renowned Hollywood star, Chris Hemsworth. Nowadays, Australian English is moving towards a new goal, which we might see in the near future as the epicenter in the Asia-Pacific region. It is of course an important thing to Australian English in the international stage and a remarkable progress to the use of it in global context. Australian English could play a major part in the world's affairs, especially once within its sphere of influence. It could be the tool of mediation in many fields, such as global security, economy, law, etc. This is of course a highly positive thing that could ever happen to a language, to become the mediator for a better world, a tool of finer things in life.